This is Wong, and you're listening to Words of Mass Disruption. The problem with lessons is that it's not about learning, it's about replicating. That's how they're structured, and that's what sells. It's let me tell you the 10 easy steps to do what I do and be who I am, but that's not how you get better. It's just how you execute. I never wanted to earn money doing something I didn't enjoy doing, because then you get locked into a lifestyle, because now your livelihood depends on this thing that you've built, and you become a prisoner of your own success. And so that's something I've always shied away from. So anything that I didn't really have fun doing, I just kind of avoided. So sort of stupid on one end, but on the flip side, I'm still doing what I do. So it's been okay. So I'm kind of torn between whether or not I've missed an opportunity or I've made a greater one.
You're listening to Words of Mass Disruption with Eric Haynes.
Welcome to Words of Mass Disruption, and I'm your host, Eric Haynes. Today we're going to revisit our sit-down with Mr. Wong. He was out here in Dallas a few months ago working on a project with Dell, centered around e-waste and giving it a new life, a new perspective. We couldn't get into all the details when he first sat down, but now the project has been released to the public. You can check it out at Wong's blog. We will have links to all the details, the amazing images, and the behind-the-scenes videos in the show notes. This is an amazing project, and you should check it out. It will blow you away. We have added the content around that project to this interview. But first, check this out.
You are listening to the podcast, Words of Mass Disruption with your host, Eric Haynes. This is the top podcast for tech and business conversations, where you will get the latest details on emerging and disruptive technology from industry leaders. We go behind the curtain to get the stories you won't hear anywhere else. Words of Mass Disruption, the leader in business transformation. Subscribe now.
In this episode, we talk to the artist known for his amazing hyper-realistic photography, Wong, Mr. Ben Wong. We talk storytelling, how to go viral, his journey from engineer to cutting-edge and in-demand artist. Ben is self-taught. He is one of the new generation of self-made success stories that learned his skill online and used social to build an empire and an intensely loyal following. Marketers, this is your new super informed customer who also happens to be smart enough to build a business around his strengths and core beliefs. He has created his agency around an unconventional business model that allows him to stick to his core tenets, as well as continue to have the flexibility to only work on what he wants to work on and who he wants to work with. So here it is, Wong.
My real name is Benjamin Wong. Wong was sort of invented when I went to go buy my website, and I realized that benjaminwong.ca, because I'm Canadian, happened to be a photographer that lived 6 hours away.
Huh.
I was like, hell no! So
That's funny.
had to think up something different. So Von means from in German. So from the family of Wong just sort of made sense and sounded pretty cool.
So you grew up in
And
Canada?
Yeah, I'm Canadian. Born in Toronto, but went to 13 different schools in 3 different countries, 3 different languages. So technically I'm from Montreal, but
And you're an engineer by trade?
engineer by trade. Quit
Wow.
my job in 2012. So
All
5
because
years
of a
now.
girl is what I heard. No,
Well,
you started photography because of a girl.
I started photography because of a girl. The job quitting sort of coincided with going from junior engineer to engineer. So 3.5 years in, I got the piece of paper that said, "Congrats, you're now an official engineer." And I'm like, "See ya." So that was kind of the sequence of events.
But it seems like there's a trend too, because you started doing photography and you almost immediately landed a gig where you're getting paid to do it. But then after a while, you kind of like, that wasn't the right thing for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, my photography career had a few different phases. When I first started out, the first time I got paid was about a year in as a hobby. I just started doing events, and I was like, "Hey, this is great! I can get paid to have a good time." And so I dove into that head first because it allowed me to earn enough money to buy more gear, to shoot better, to buy more gear again. And I kept that going until it eventually became a second job. And I was like, "Hey, I never signed up for this to have 2 jobs. I just wanted a job and a hobby." So I shut that down and then started doing the creative stuff. When I quit my day job as an engineer, it was not necessarily to become a photographer, because that was never really in the plans. I just didn't want to do engineering anymore. So I became a photographer by default because it was the only way I was earning money. And now fast forward a few years later, I went from doing cool side projects, sometimes working with music bands and all that, to actually developing full-scale campaigns, which is pretty cool.
So I saw a poster a long time ago. It showed someone sitting in a cubicle, and it said, "Why did they always tell us to think outside the box, but then they make us sit in a box?" I think you defined that. That the box wasn't for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, I didn't hate my engineering job. It never quite felt like what I wanted to do for the rest of my life because I was never engrossed in it. But I didn't hate my job either. It was just something you did, right? The interesting thing about, I think, growing up is, I don't know if it's because I grew up in an Asian family. You have this very simple track. After primary school, you go to middle school. After middle school, you go to high school. After high school, you do university. And then suddenly it was like, oh, what do I do now? I guess I do the job that I studied for, and that's just sort of continued. And so I just basically followed the track until it ran out on me, and I was like, well, there's nowhere left to go, because I think that the primary thought that got me to quit was waking up one morning and wondering why I was waking up to go to work, and realizing that I didn't want to do this in 10 years. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew it wasn't this. So that was probably the driving factor more than anything else.
So you've been doing photography for about 10 years, right?
Yeah, nine years since I bought my first camera. It's November 2012. Oh, wait, no, that was when I quit my job. November 2008 is when I
It's almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So when you take the pictures, are you ever doing it with the iPhone or any of the mobile phones, or are you always using, the real DSLRs, the real gear?
Yeah, so I probably take more photos with my iPhone than with anything else, because I use them just to take photos of the everyday stuff. But when I create an actual project, it's usually always with a real camera. I mean, these are projects that take usually between conception to release about a year to produce. So
Wow.
you might as well use a better camera.
Yeah. So is most of that year all the way up to getting the gig set up, or is it post work as
Yeah,
well?
the post ironically just takes a few hours per image, if any, and I probably shoot 3 photos per series. So post production is probably the easiest one. The hardest part generally is the pre-production, coming up with the idea, refining it, getting the pieces all in place, finding all the right stuff to bring it to life. And the post segment that does take a lot of time is the release, like the marketing release. How are you going to release it? What is the story you're going to craft around it? How is that story going to be retold in a way that's easily digestible by social? Because there are different types of artists out there, those who create because they feel compelled to, and those who create because they want it to be seen.
So how much of the story exists and how much of it changes before and after you've taken all the pictures, done the production, and you're going to release it? Does the story still develop after that?
The way the story is told always changes, because that's what storytelling is. The facts are the same. It's just which ones do you choose to highlight and which ones do you choose to feature less. Ultimately, you're picking and choosing to tell the narrative that you think will stick the most. And so that's a pretty big component of it.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny because a lot of the marketers I talk to, and in fact, I'm going to an event tomorrow night, digital storytelling. It's 3 agencies up there talking about storytelling, and I think that's exactly what you're doing. And they wish they had that more creative ability to create those photos. A lot of the marketers and storytellers, they struggle with that creative part of it.
I think part of the reason why creativity tends to suffer in the larger agencies is because it has to go through so many levels of approval that you don't have the flexibility to pivot and change. And so I'm the equivalent of a small marketing agency. I'm just this one-man team, and the fact that hierarchy that you have to climb to interact with the client is extremely small. If there is none, then it's even faster. Gives you a lot more fluidity to just pivot when things aren't working, or to make the story more interesting, or to shift around and play by ear.
So it's like more about that production it takes. So you're working on a project here in Dallas. You have a lot of parts, you have a lot of people, you have a lot of gear. How do you manage all that? How do you bring all that together?
So in my workflow, I think, 90% of the work that I do is creative, and then maybe 10% has a client involved. But I try to keep the general flow about the same, which is to focus first on the story, figure out what that one catchy element is, and then to build the rest around that. So if you don't have a good headline, if you don't have something that will be like if the core isn't interesting, then it doesn't really matter how you fluff it up. It's not really going to make it more interesting.
How much creative control do your clients give you? 100%?
So I don't really do any pitching. I wait for inbounds. And so at the end of the day, the only people that reach out to me want what I do. So usually that does afford me quite a little bit of creative control. I think more so than anyone else that I know. Because most photographers who are hired by an agency are given a brief and their job is to execute it. Whereas in my case, they say, this is what we're trying to achieve. How would you go about to do it? So there are restrictions and there are constraints to that. A lot always have the brand constraints and how their story is going to be told.
Right.
But with a lot more latitude, I think.
That's cool. So what is your main medium to get it out there? Is it social media? Is it Instagram, YouTube? I guess it's more photography driven, not video.
Actually, it is, oddly enough, very much video centric. Facebook video is one of the fastest growing and highest engagement platform out there. And for some reason, I don't know if it's algorithmic or just pure like human interest, but Facebook videos seem to be really, really huge because people are able to consume a large volume of data without ever moving. They literally just scroll and stop if it's interesting enough.
Sure.
So you never need to like click because of the autoplay. You just sit and watch, and if it's interesting, you stay and watch more. And more so than a photo. So I'll get a lot of likes on Instagram, but that like doesn't transcend to a deeper action because people are used to just being fed content that they will double tap on and keep moving on. And so it's a very ephemeral interaction, whereas the Facebook videos, oddly enough, seem to drive a deeper emotional connection.
Are you able to get a specific call to action out of that on Facebook?
On
like
occasion,
what do you want
yeah.
them to do?
It really depends. So, I mean, when I did a petition for shark conservation on one of my projects, we got over 80,000 petition signatures. I've ran an earlier campaign to raise awareness for a little girl who was dying of a terminal degenerative brain disease. Eliza, yeah.
Eliza, yeah. So earlier this year, Ben flew himself across the world to help a campaign to save a little girl, a 4-year-old named Eliza O'Neill. She suffers from a degenerative brain disease, and her parents had started a GoFundMe campaign that managed to raise a little less than $100,000 in 9 months. Ben arrived and helped create a video that helped boost that campaign in less than 2 months to almost $2 million. So this is the kind of thing that Ben does. This is part of his core tenet of helping people. He has many stories like this where he went and he helped people with amazing challenges and struggles. Sometimes he included them in some work or a project he was doing, and sometimes he created something just for them to help them. That is the kind of person that Ben is.
That was $2 million. And
Yeah, I have to
just
stop
Facebook.
watching some of your stuff after a while. It's just depressing sometimes. It's like it's just so heartfelt, it's hard.
That's been one of
some
the
meaningful things you're doing.
Yeah, that's been some of the feedback that I've been receiving from people. It's like, can't you just do things that are fun for once instead of talking about all the problems in the world? Like I have a fun approach to it, but ultimately they are usually anchored in some form of reality or change. Because I think 2 years ago, I just kind of got bored of creating content that was just pretty for the sake of being pretty and wanted to achieve some measurable impact with it.
You were doing storm chasing photos too at some point. What was that all about?
Yeah, storm chasing. So Anna, my girlfriend, really wanted to go storm chasing because she just thought it would be cool and fun. And that was at a time where I was like, well, I don't want to do anything that doesn't have a cause to it. And she was like, okay, well, why don't we go storm chasing and make it about climate change? And I was like, I can do climate change. So I think within 10 days, reached out to some friends, found a storm chaser called Kelly DeLay, and asked him if he'd take us out on 2-week storm chasing trip. And boom, off we were. Adventure time.
And of course, that's something that other people would do in a studio. They would layer it. They would take a picture of the storm, and then they would take the picture of the models, and they would layer it in, and it would look real. But you're doing it for real.
Yeah, because it's not fun otherwise. I came to the realization, like, I think 4 years, 5 years ago, that I just didn't like sitting in front of a computer all alone in my room working on something. What I really like is going out and having a unique, fun experience and
That's
doing something
that's
different.
probably why you have a lot of people want to volunteer and help because you're doing it and it's more fun for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately everybody is in it for a unique experience. I mean, that's what people spend their money on. You know, you spend money to have an experience that you wouldn't otherwise have, to create new memories. And maybe that's the reason why I'm able to get volunteers to be a part of these things, is because they're getting to do something they would never get to do otherwise. And sure, it might not be exactly what they expect because it's sort of unpredictable, but it will be something they've never done before, never seen before, never would have the opportunity to go to, even if they wanted to pay for it. It's just so rare to get those chances.
Yeah, so from a brand building perspective on social media, no matter what the tool is, the number one thing everyone says is quality and quantity, right? And consistency. And your quality is way better than I would say most people's stuff. They're just trying to get a click. They're trying to get a comment. They're trying to get an interaction, some kind of engagement. You're actually getting people that are coming up with ideas, pitching them to you, getting involved in them, getting more people. That's like the ultimate engagement right there. Marketers and sellers focus heavily on driving engagement, getting the viewer to click on something, to stop and look, and then to respond to a call to action, something specific. Engagement usually means leaving a comment or liking a post, and engagement is higher on Instagram than other platforms, and its average engagement is only at 4%. So if you're getting 4% engagement, that usually means that your followers or subscribers, 4% of them, are viewing, liking, or commenting on your content. What Ben has found a way to do is take that to the next level and get real physical engagement with his followers. They are part of the process. He gets them engaging with him, helping him with his projects, bringing ideas out, and making these projects even better because they're engaging with them. Sure, these are his projects, but he involves them in the process. And to make something special, this in turn drives more engagement and builds brand loyalty because they're making something special. This is the holy grail of engagement. It's brand loyalty. Some of the best brands try to drive loyalty through emotion and cool factor. But what Ben does is he's making you part of the process and allowing you to see what happens behind the scenes too.
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of it that way, but sure. There's there are different types of things that work on social these days. I feel like either you're doing something that's really hi-fi, really high quality, and that people have never seen before, and that's sort of a higher stakes gamble because every project you do um, has a it still has a chance of failure, but when it fails, you've invested a lot into it, so your ROI is a little bit harder to gauge. Or you're the type of person who does lo-fi stuff, but you can do it every single day, and you got that consistency. So if they fall through, it doesn't matter because you're just churning out new content. I personally find the lo-fi stuff a little bit more of a drag. It just feels like homework, and you have to do the same thing every day over and over with different variants. So I just opted for the hi-fi route. And so every time I do something, I try to make it unique, and I try to blow people out of the water in some way, shape, or form.
Well, how much do you use the live video and the live platform?
So I use Facebook Live to get volunteers. So like I think on this project we just did, I think Monday woke up and I was like, we need more volunteers. So I just did a live, and then by Tuesday there were people that showed up, and it's actually pretty effective. Live Facebook Lives and Instagram Lives, they tend to do really well when you have something to show. I think. I mean, you can do the the casting or the talk show style interactions and stuff, but for me and the type of work that I do, I found it to be extremely effective when you're on site and saying, I'm here, right now, come join me. And that's just crazy. It's when like the digital world translates into an actual physical action.
Yeah, that's what it is, because most people are just trying to get them to buy something in a picture, click on the picture to sign up for something. You're saying, let's be a part of it.
Yeah, let's come hang out. It'll be something you've never done before.
So Ben obviously knows how to engage his audience and create that loyal fan base that continues to grow today. But what are the things that he's doing to make his things go viral?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the things that I try to do with my projects is to make sure that with everything that I do, there's a really catchy headline that can be created out of it. Ultimately, every reporter or every article that's being written, they all have to have this really interesting title. And there are a whole bunch of studies online that show people will share things without even clicking on it if the title is engaging enough. And so I always try to make sure that the base context of what I create is inherently interesting. And then, sure, the photograph is important, but that's almost like the icing on top. That's what transforms the title from content to clickbait to content. Is that if you actually click on it and it sounds extravagant, but it actually is what you say it is, then that becomes good content. And then within that, the entire story and the way it's developed is part of that journey. So, for example, when you create something nowadays, people don't like big blocks of text. If you look at a BuzzFeed article or anything on like Upworthy or whatnot, it's constructed in almost big headlines with paragraphs of subtext that you may not need to read in order to understand the story. So it's almost like the equivalent of a picture book nowadays. That's what people like to consume. If they're reading on mobile, they just want to see the headlines, get a sense of it, and then that's it. They're happy with it. Then they can share it if they found it engaging enough. Similarly, if you're creating a Facebook video, the first 2 seconds, I think there was like a Facebook seminar I sat in, it's like the average person decides whether to watch or move on after 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, if your first 2.5 seconds aren't drawing people in right away, then you've sort of failed, because it doesn't matter if it's great after 10, no one's going to get there.
Right. Well, even doing this podcast, the first 10 seconds, I got to take an interesting clip that we're going to talk about later, right? And bring them in. You know?
So it's the same with everything. So it's almost like figuring out what will get people to talk about it and try to build that in. So, the algorithms are always changing. What's hot today might not be hot tomorrow, all those things, but you just try to keep those fundamentals in line, I think is what's really important.
So you're very accessible. You make yourself available to your fans. Do you get a lot? You obviously get a lot of ideas, you collaborate a lot. But are they asking you for advice on like, hey, I'm an influencer, or I'm a photographer. How do you do this? How do I get there? How do I go viral? How do I make it work?
Yeah, I try to reply to, I do reply to every single email that I get. So I have these type forms that I route people through so that they can reach out to me and connect, and my information is available publicly, and I do take the time to respond. I don't know if people necessarily reach out to me with specific advice and questions like that. I almost feel like people just want to say hi and connect, and just interact, and less about necessarily taking something, which is kind of interesting. In some ways, what I do is really cool, and in others, and this is something that I struggle with a little bit, is that my life is a little bit unrelatable. Like it's not like people are like, oh man, I wish I knew what to do with an entire warehouse full of e-waste, and so they really struggle to connect with it and fit what I do in their lives. And so that's something that I always try to figure out. Is like, how can I make this a little bit more relatable? So in the way I tell the stories, I always try to focus on how things just started out with one idea that led to another, and that just organically grew. I didn't inherently start off with something that other people didn't have. I'm not special. I'm not rich, or I'm not, there's nothing that I don't do it. I don't accomplish what I do because I have necessarily a huge advantage. I do have some advantages in terms of, I have the gear, I've built up a following, all these things make it easier. But, ultimately, if somebody wants something, there's no reason they should, if they work at it, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to get there. And that's more the message I'm trying to get across, that if you care about something, just go out and do it, and you'll be surprised at what you can do.
Well, it seems like you also have some other characteristics. You're very well-meaning. You're a very good person. And, you really care about, other things that aren't necessarily you. But I think there's something different that makes people want to engage with you differently. You're more open about it, or just the way you engage with people. But I don't see other artists like that. I don't see a lot of other folks like that.
Well, if I were to take a selfish approach to it, my first behind the scene video. So actually how I learned photography off the internet. I never, took a class or anything. And so I am where I am because other people gave their knowledge freely. And so really early on in my photography days, I would do the same. That was just part of what we did. Every time you posted something, you would share how it was done. And then over time, I started off with behind the scene photos, and then that grew to behind the scene videos. And I noticed that when I did videos and I explained to people how I did things, I would get exponentially more engagement because people now had a reason to talk to me. They were a lot more interested in learning, and there was a takeaway for them. It wasn't just, oh, that looks pretty. And then by writing that idea that you were able to, when you give, like people are willing to give back, it's just like very like positive cycle. So, I as generous as it may look, it's also it's not purely altruistic. There's a mutual gain, and I think the world's a lot better that way if you can give what you have and others will give what they have, and it creates this really like positive ecosystem. And I guess that's just the type of life I like to live, and hopefully more to lead by example. And it's yeah.
It's interesting is that I talk to a lot of, top marketers and sales folks out there in the industry. And that's the number one thing that's changed is you just have to give. And you don't put things behind a wall. You don't make people pay for everything. And that's been like, I think social media has really changed that. It's changed it more to, here's my material. Here's my material. If you really like it, you'll engage with me and we'll go do some work together. Or you won't like it and you'll move on, instead of always trying to bait them and trying to get them into a room and try to sell them something. It seems like it's really changed into this kind of giving kind of perspective. I think that's where I'm seeing that correlation kind of between what you do and a lot of the corporate folks I talk to.
Interesting.
It's very close. It is interesting.
It's sort of like the freemium model, right?
Yeah.
Like, here, download this app for free. If you like us, you got these few extra features. You can pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about doing, you have a few tutorials, videos and gear videos. There's people that all they do, there's a YouTube influencer, all they do is gear videos and tutorials. Have you thought about doing that?
I went through a phase where I was considering it, and I ultimately just realized I found that really boring to just, talk about gear all day long and get people to buy stuff. Similarly with tutorials, I made one tutorial that I sold for a little while, and now I took it down because it was getting old. I think I missed out on a huge financial opportunity to sell stuff. You can't buy any of my prints; they're not for sale. You can't, because people volunteer for it, and it just doesn't feel right to be the only one to earn money for it.
Wow. So it's just out there for people to repost.
Yeah, I just
give you credit for it, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'll do giveaways. I'll give them away. They'll sometimes be exposed in places, but like they're not really tracked. They're not created to be sold. And so I don't sell prints. I don't do gear reviews, so I'm missing out on a ton of affiliate sales. I don't want to do like lessons because that just seems really boring. That's about the problem with lessons is that it's not about learning, it's about replicating. That's how they're structured, and that's what sells.
That's true.
It's let me tell you the 10 easy steps to do what I do and be who I am, but that's not how you get better. It's just how you execute. And so I think I missed out on a lot of these opportunities to do things that but in on the flip side, I never wanted to earn money doing something I didn't enjoy doing, because then you get locked into a lifestyle, because now your livelihood depends on this thing that you've built, and you become a prisoner of your own success. And so that's something I've always shied away from. So anything that I didn't really have fun doing, I just kind of avoided. So sort of stupid on one end, but on the flip side, I'm still doing what I do. So it's been okay. So I'm kind of torn between whether or not I've missed an opportunity or I've made a greater one. But really, like I love giving things away for free. Like we just mentioned, like I love being able to just put things out there and answer questions and teach people without ever needing to take anything from them, and making people who have a ton of money, like corporations, and spend their money. I mean, they have these quarterly budgets they're going to spend regardless on something. And my goal is to like make them spend it on something that matters. And I can make a good living doing that. And on top of that, I can still keep entertaining people and inspiring them and all this other stuff. So my hope is to strike a balance by taking money from those who have a lot of it and just giving the rest out for free to the rest, instead of trying to take $20 here and there. I can just, make a 5 or 6 figure paycheck.
How has social media, the rise of social media, and you've kind of grown up on it over the last 9, 10 years, and your careers have been developed over it to a certain degree. How has social media changed the way we look at photography and art, and has it changed it to a commodity now that we just take for granted? Is it something we just get used to, and how has it changed it?
So if I started photography 20 years ago, I probably would have just stopped because I would have been bored. I mean, I definitely personally thrive on the feedback loop. So I need to know that what I create is being appreciated for me to want to create it. Like that's just my personality. Um, and you can like it or hate it. I don't think that's a productive conversation because it exists. What's the interesting thing is to study the trends and opportunities that grow as a result of it. So while each individual piece of content may be less valuable now than it was before because of how easy it is to create, there is a lot more opportunity because the market has grown, because now the demand for content has equally grown with the ease of creation. Now, where you decide to fall into that, whether you're on the hi-fi spectrum, the lo-fi spectrum, the stock spectrum, that's entirely up to you. And um, you know, I personally think that whichever way the trend is going, you have to not just follow it, but project further. Um, because if there's already a trend, you've probably missed it. Like if you're like, oh, well, everyone's on Instagram and look at all these successful Instagrammers, I should get into the Instagram game too, then you're probably too late. It's like, oh, look, Bitcoin's rising. I should buy Bitcoin now. You're probably a little too late
Yeah,
because everyone's already talking about it.
yeah, it just
So,
doubled again the last couple weeks.
yeah. So, but that is not to say like, oh, let's look at where these new opportunities are headed towards. Let's see how can I build the base for the next step, and really focusing also. I think not losing track of why you're doing it is a pretty big thing. Um, if you're just creating something to be popular to get likes, um, you'll eventually forget why you were starting off doing it in the first place. So like with me with photography, when I first began, I just wanted opportunities to travel. I wanted the opportunity to meet new, exciting people. I wanted the opportunity to have different experiences that I would never have otherwise, and the opportunity to have a positive impact on people. And so those are like kind of core tenets of what I do that have stuck with me, regardless of which phase of the career, regardless of shifts in social media, regardless of financial situations. Like those are things that I always stick to, which is why my lifestyle inherently involves meeting cool people, traveling, helping others out, and all these things. But if I had just been at it from a biz dev perspective or a fan follower perspective, I think my path would have taken me away from what I really wanted out of the career path. And so I think that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, it seems like it would be impossible to scale to what you're doing now and being global without the tools of social media.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that before. It would have been very small, people you're around, and you'd probably be doing something different.
Or I could have just gotten lucky and met the right
Yeah,
producer.
that's usually what it takes in the past,
Yeah,
right? You
you
have to
meet the
meet the
right
right people.
person.
Yeah,
But so this is the funny thing, right? So before, if you got into the 1 percentile, the top 5 percentile, you made it. Like you were rock star status for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Now you could make it for about 6 months and just drop off to oblivion because the trends are a lot faster. And you might be a leader in your niche field, but to get to the rock star status, it's really, really hard these days. I think there are very few industries where you still see that, such as in like Hollywood and maybe a few music stars here and there, but even that seems to be significantly changing.
so we get to the end, and you want to know why Ben was here in Dallas, right? Well, he was partnering with Dell for a big project about e-waste. So let's hear him talk about it.
Yeah, let's come hang out. It'll be something you've never done before.
That's what it sounds like. So can you talk much about what you're doing in Dallas right now?
Yeah, sure. So I came to Dallas to work on a project with Dell where we're collaborating to raise awareness for how much electronic waste is being generated in the world. And I met Dell at South by Southwest, and I've been trying to do something with them for a long time now because they have these really cool environmental initiatives, and these companies are always so large, so it's really just about finding the right person. And I managed to connect with Sarah Gilliam, who's working in their corporate social responsibility team, and she just fell in love with some of the work that I did, and and totally bought into the idea of creating something. And so took us, I think, 8 months to just hammer something up, go up and down the ranks of approvals, and pull something together. And so we created these ridiculously crazy sculptures out of electronic waste. And the goal is just to encourage people to recycle more. And the only plug that Dell really gets is just companies like Dell who have these great take back programs can't recycle stuff unless you send it in. So please send your shit in. It's like a very simple plug. It's something that's very organic and heartfelt, and really the only call to action is just to get people to recycle their stuff instead of throwing it into landfill. And I think that's the type of projects that I feel like social will really get behind, because it's not selly. It's not really trying to get people to buy anything. If anything, it's just encouraging people to do the right thing, and talking about a problem they may not have heard about in a meaningful way.
All right, so thanks for checking us out. So you should know that every day 142,000 computers are thrown away in the US. Most of it ends up in a landfill around the world somewhere, and it poisons the water and the land all around it, especially the stuff that's in those computers. Globally, only 15% of e-waste is even recycled. All right, so that's our episode. Go ahead and check out the show notes for all the details. You got to see the videos he put out. You got to see the images. They're pretty amazing. And the YouTube video version of this will have a bunch of those images in it. Check it out.
Words of mass destruction. Words of mass destruction.
This is
This happens.
That's
this is
normal.
how boring the interview was to Anna.
Yeah. In fact, usually these two are asleep in here. Normally, I'm not in here talking. I'm watching a movie.